Someone stole my credit card and bought an iPad, but had it shipped to my house. What's your best stupid criminal story? Story 1. A friend of mine had his backpack with his $1,400 engineering laptop in it, stolen while at the campus food court. I had a weird gut feeling it would turn up on Craigslist or somewhere similar. Every day for a week, I checked Craigslist. Exactly 1 week later, I found the laptop. This extremely stupid criminal took a picture of the laptop screen with my friend's login name. Yeah, very stupid criminal. So I contacted the seller immediately via email, and he responded within 20 minutes. I said I'd like to buy the laptop from him. We agreed to meet at a nearby parking lot later that day. Next, we called the cops. They agreed to set up a sting on the thief. One of the officers pretended to be a buyer and approached the thief. The officer acted as if he was examining the laptop, but was actually looking for the serial number. Boom, it had a matching serial number, and they arrested this idiot. A week ago, 4 months later, the guy was proven guilty and to my knowledge is spending a year in prison. Plus, my buddy finally got his laptop back. Story 2. My grandfather is a war veteran, the gung-ho type that loves his automatic weapon collection. Not a redneck, he actually lived up in the northern USA. He just was a high-ranking human weapon with a love of guns. Fast forward from 1950 to 1999, retired and nearly 80 years old, my grandfather was out on his lawn power washing his boat when a thief came up behind him and ordered him into his house at gunpoint. While inside the house, my grandfather instructed the single thief that all of his money was upstairs in a box in his coat room. Thinking of my grandfather as an old and weak person, the thief leaves him alone to go retrieve his loot upstairs. Grandfather goes to his gun case in the other room, retrieves an M4A1 assault rifle. He makes a quick stop at his liquor cabinet to pour himself a glass of scotch and is waiting silently in a rocking chair facing the stairs. There was no money in the coat room closet. The thief was angry now. Rushing down the stairs, he nearly crap on himself when he sees an assault rifle pointed at him. He stumbles down the stairs and knocks himself out cold on the hardwood railing on the way down. Grandfather ties him up and calls the police. Story 3. I've got one. From this past weekend, actually. I volunteer cleaning up a local park. It's called a park, but it has no facilities, no employees, etc. It's really more of a forest, and it doesn't get much official attention. Anyway, almost every day, I walk through, pick up trash, and ensure it's properly disposed of. It's a beautiful park, and I like to keep it that way. So Sunday afternoon, I found that someone had dumped a huge amount of construction debris in the park along one of the access roads. As I piled it up neatly, I found a receipt with a guy's name, address, and phone number, along with a description of his vehicle, including the make, model, mileage, and VIN. So I called the state park police and asked to speak with an officer, showed him the dumped trash, showed him the receipt I found, and made a formal complaint. He gave me the usual, "We'll let you know if we need anything else from you." The officer called me last night to thank me for finding the receipt. He said they went and paid the guy a visit, found that vehicle in the driveway, and he answered the door. The officer said he insisted he knew nothing about illegal dumping, no surprise. And when it seemed like the interrogation was going nowhere, he pulled out the receipt and then the guy said, "That's not my name." He already said it was him. The officer told me that's when he said, "Okay, sir, if you're not going to properly identify yourself, you're under arrest for obstructing a government official, a Class A misdemeanor, and we'll fingerprint you at the station and find out who you really are." Suddenly, the guy's story changed. He was the guy on the receipt, that was his truck, and he dumped the trash in the park. The officer even said that the guy said, "I never thought I'd get caught," and he wouldn't have either if it wasn't for us meddling kids. Story 4. When I worked at Guitar Center, a couple came into the store. The guy left and the girl stayed, checking out guitars. A sales guy saw her holding 2 higher-end Gibson Les Pauls down by the low-end side of the wall by the BC Riches. He asked if he could help, and she asked a question about the guitars. He took one from her and went to check something on it. Once he was about 20 yards away, she bolted. She sprinted down the hallway to the warehouse, past the bathrooms, and busted out the emergency exit door that lets out behind the store. 2 guys took chase and made it out in time to see a car squealing around the corner of the building. We really had nothing to go on. I'm pissed because having a $3,500 guitar stolen cuts into my bonus, and it just overall sucks to have your crew bummed about the theft, etc. Cut to 1 week later. I'm running my morning meeting and I'm told I have an important phone call. I take the call and my friend is telling me I have to check my email. I do, and there's a link from him to a Craigslist ad. The idiot posted a photo of himself holding the guitar. I know it's ours, I just know it. He describes it inaccurately and is asking $1,000. Gives a BS reason for it not having a case. We need the serial number. We need that damn number. Another manager calls him pretending to be a collector. He casually asks for the serial number, saying he's only looking for guitars from certain years. He calls it a date code, but I don't think the guy is buying it. He tells him he'll call him back with the number, but never does. We're antsy. We call the cops. We form a plan. Another of our guys calls and tells this dude he just has to have this guitar. He'll come meet him with cash. Guy agrees. They meet at a gas station. Dude walks up with this gorgeous $3,500 Les Paul and a $35 gig bag. The B is for a bit, and my dude asks to see the guitar. He looks it over and checks the serial. It's ours. Yeah, man, this is exactly what I was hoping for. Great guitar. Then he waves across the street to the cop car that was waiting around the corner. Dude is like a deer in headlights. Cops arrest him and even let us leave with the guitar. Back at the store, my friend's phone rings. It's the guy's number. He answers. Girl. Were you meeting my boyfriend about a guitar? Friend. Yeah, I sure did. Girl. Oh, he's not back yet. Are you still with him? Friend. Nope, I'm already home. Girl. Oh, weird. Okay, well, did you get the guitar? Friend. I sure did. I'm holding it right now. Thanks. Girl. Oh, great. Thanks. Have a good day. 1 hour later, she called back. Didn't bother to answer. She left a very nasty voicemail with a lot of swearing. Priceless. I hear he threw her under the bus in court and they both were in hot water over the whole thing. Story 5. This kid that was in my class in high school years back ran an operation on eBay selling those underbody neon light kits. You know, the crap that makes you look all fast and furious. Anyways, he makes a small fortune selling this stuff. The only problem was that when the customer received their product, it was just a picture of a neon car kit. This kid had apparently worded his description to confuse people into thinking they were buying the real thing. But in reality, they were spending about $200 on a piece of paper. A bunch of pissed off people from around the country called our local police, and he ended up getting arrested. I can't remember the charge, but he had tens of thousands of dollars to pay back, plus fines. The entire town shamed him, made fun of him for crying when the police interviewed him and everything. He was all over the news for a while. Story 6. Can't top the Granbo story, but I have a good example of thieves picking the wrong person, or persons in this case, to rob. I was working as a manager at an ice rink at the time. One night during an adult league game, I heard a ruckus coming from the other side of my office wall. These are not thin walls, so I went to investigate. When I walked through the door that separates the lobby from the rink, the first thing I noticed was that neither team was on the ice. The score was 3-3 and the referees looked a little frightened. Since the game had recently started, this was very odd. At that moment, the door to locker room 1 flew open so hard that one of the hinges broke. Out of the door flew the limp body of a 20-something-year-old man with baggy jeans and a long white and bloody shirt, followed closely by his flat-brimmed hat and his 2 equally humbled buddies. This is what went down. At around the beginning of the second period, both teams noticed a group of 3 thugs slip in the back door and start looting the wallets and cell phones from the players' clothes. This was a common problem at the rink, and players are advised not to bring in valuables. Common a problem as it was, both teams were on high alert from being robbed in this way just a week prior. The captains had the game stopped and called a timeout. This is when things got ugly. Imagine the look on these crooks' faces when an army of 18 heavily padded, enraged men with 5-foot-long weapons came storming into the small room to find them with a pile of cell phones, wallets, and watches. The first guy had come by the time the cops arrived. The other 2 weren't knocked out and actually attempted to run. A quick crack on the shin with a hockey stick was all that was needed to keep them from leaving. The players all gathered around the thieves in an impenetrable circle until the cops came. I spoke to the player who admitted that he knocked the first guy out cold with a chop in the dome. He said that when his wallet was stolen the week before, it left with the only copy of his favorite picture of his daughter who died a year earlier. This guy was in his 30s, so the daughter couldn't have been very old. He had a feeling he would go to jail, but I decided not to pass this info to the cops once I saw the guy come to. The cops asked the players if they wanted them to go to jail. One guy chimed in and said, "I think they've had enough." Story 7. This story begins at around 3 a.m. outside my apartment complex. We lived in a corner suite, ground floor apartment. I heard a rustling and looked out my window. Guy was dragging around a box of donated clothing in the parking lot, occasionally stopping to throw out some ladies' clothing, which I assume it all was. Now, the next morning, my girlfriend and I got up and went to work. I worked only a few blocks away, so I walked. I passed the same guy sleeping on the corner of the street. I walked by, not thinking anything about it. Around 10 a.m., I got a call from the landlord saying my apartment got broken into. After I passed this guy and got out of sight, he got up and knocked on the neighbor's windows. She looked out and he told her that he forgot his key and wanted to be let in. She said, "No, back off." 2 minutes after that, she heard the guy knocking on our window. Apparently, since nobody answered, he busted the glass and let himself in. I guess she didn't hear this. After tearing our place apart and stuffing our valuables in a laundry basket, he walked up and down the hallway screaming. He was confronted by somebody and said he was looking for his girlfriend's apartment. After this encounter, the guy called a cab. You heard me, a cab. Neighbor saw the cab pull up and the guy got in with the laundry basket of crap, so she wrote down the cab number and called the cops. Cops called the cabbie and asked if the guy looked like he had stolen a bunch of stuff. Cabbie said yes. Cops asked cabbie for where he was being dropped off and picked him up there. Best parts, he pleaded not guilty and made me go to court. He left his shoes behind and took mine. The thing that was the nail in the coffin, I am told, was that I mentioned to a cop after I collected everything that I was still missing my bacon-flavored toothpicks. The cops found them in his pants pocket. When taking my Xbox 360, rather than disconnect the network cable, he ripped it out, leaving the end in the 360. I don't know how hard he must have had to rip a network cable in half. My girlfriend was missing some of her birth control pills. We never found them, assumed eaten. After everything, we only lost one sword and one beer. Story 8. This is my story of how Visa paid me for a diamond ring. One day I went to check my credit card bill and noticed that there were 2 real charges, one at some random jewelry store in Seattle and one at jcpenney.com. This was back in 2003, before they would call you instantly. I called them and they said they would take care of it. The charges were removed immediately. I thought I was done with the whole thing. My wife's family lives out of the country, and we go visit them every year for Christmas. Everyone just buys stuff and ships it to us in the months before, so we get random packages all the time. A day or two later, my wife, then girlfriend, calls me at school and says, did you order a 3-diamond engagement ring? Now she knows it is not for her cause, she hates diamonds. We quickly figured out that this must be the $2,000 charge on my credit card bill. It seems they had the item shipped overnight. No idea why they sent it to my address. Maybe they were hoping to pick it up in the mail. It's almost time to fly out of the country, so we stash it in my desk and figure we will deal with it when we get back. 3 weeks later, when everything is settled down, I call JCPenney and explain the situation. I am very clear. I have the ring, did not pay a dime for it, and would be happy to get it back to them if they send me a shipping box. They offer to send me a prepaid thing so I can return it. A couple days later it arrives, but it is only a shipping label, and I don't have the original box. I don't want to be responsible for the item getting damaged in shipping, so I called JCPenney and explained the whole thing again. They say I should just bring the label and ring to a local JCPenney and they will take care of it. So we hop in the car and go to the local store. Here is the flow of events. The service desk won't help us. Anything jewelry must be handled by that department. The jewelry department looks up the order and finds that it is a special order, and only the special order department can do anything with it. There just happens to be a special order counter downstairs. So we end up at the special order counter and I explain the whole story to the guy behind the counter. He gets his manager and I explain it again. I am very clear that this is not my ring and I have not paid for it. The guy at the register with his manager standing behind him tells me that the only way he can ship the ring back is as a return, and he has to put the full amount back on the original credit card. His books need to match in-out, and so that is his only option. I ask if they are going to be mad that they paid me for the ring, and he says, if they come after anyone, it is going to be me. Okay then, I say as I hand him my credit card, and he puts $2,000 on it. I figure in a week or two, JCPenney will call and get their money back. The call does not come. Not in 3 weeks or 3 months. A year later, the credit card company gets tired of me having such a large positive balance and mails me a check for $2,000. Story 9. When I was working as a waitress, I often used to go to great lengths to stop Dine and Dashes in progress, once jumping through the open pub window and chasing a trashy woman in Daisy Duke shorts. She was at least 50 years old. Several blocks, I was wearing a skirt and heeled sandals before catching her and getting my money. But this story isn't about that time. One night, a guy in his mid-20s was sitting alone having dinner. He ordered a steak dinner, a couple of beers, and some top-shelf shots of bourbon and whiskey. He ran up a $75 tab over his dinner. I come back from the other dining room to see he's not at his table. In fact, he's gone. I realized I had a dine and dash. Since it wasn't very busy, I grabbed one of the line cooks, we jumped in my car, and proceeded to drive around the neighborhood looking for him. After 20 minutes with no luck, I stopped the car and said to my coworker, "We are going about this all wrong. You're a young guy, you like your alcohol, you just ran out on a bill after having a few drinks. Where do you go?" "The next pub." We drove up to the pub just down the street and walked in, and there he was, seated at the closest booth to the door. I slid in one side, blocking him in. The cook slid in the other. I slapped his bill down and said, "You owe me some money!" The look on his face was priceless. Turns out he had no money or credit cards on him. The second pub was pissed when I told them about what was going on and his lack of money. But I did take a piece of ID as collateral. It was real. He was so embarrassed, he apologized and promised to come back the next day to settle his tab, which he actually did, and he left me a generous tip. I don't get people. Story 10. My grandmother was at the cemetery visiting my grandfather's grave. She stepped away and had her back to her car for a few minutes while she threw out the old flowers and was filling the vase with fresh water. In that few minutes, some lowlife opened her car door and snatched her purse. In her purse was her wallet, checkbook, iPhone, and a bunch of other expensive stuff. Well, the dumbass thief didn't think about the fact that iPhones have a tracking device in them. As soon as she got home, she called the cops, who were pretty useless, canceled all of her cards and the usual things you do when your wallet is stolen. Then she called us. I immediately got online, went to the Find My iPhone site, put in her info, and pulled up a map showing exactly where the phone was. Called her local police station and told them the location.